G'day meditators. In this technique, we are going to be focused on sound. Previously, we focused on sound that we hear around us in the environment in a technique called hear out. But in this technique, we're focused on sounds that we hear in our own mind. That can be self-talk, or it might be a song that you hear in your head, sounds that are going on inside your mind. You may be a little surprised to be asked to focus on thought in meditation. There is a prevailing misconception out there that somehow thought and meditation are like oil and water. They can't mix. But actually, when we treat our thought as a sensory activity and get interested in its qualities and its characteristics, then meditation can absolutely include thought. So here's how it works. Like our other 5-minute guided meditations, we'll be noting and labeling. Noting just means that we acknowledge when our attention is drawn to an example of mental talk. And labeling means that we use the appropriate label. There are 2 labels that we use in this technique. One is just hear, for when you hear an example of mental talk or sound in your mind. The other label is rest. So just say you're focusing on the area where self-talk happens inside your own head, and you notice for a moment that there's a gap between the thoughts, or perhaps just that there's no thought. Either of those experiences is an example of rest in that space, so you'd use the label rest. This technique is called hear in the Unified Mindfulness System. So when our attention is drawn to an example of hear in, we acknowledge it, we give it the label either hear or rest, and then we focus on the experience for a few seconds. To help us focus, we get really interested in the characteristics of that experience. In hear in, those characteristics might be things like, where is it happening inside my head? How loud is it? Is it a steady sound, or is it kind of intermittent? Whose voice is it? Things like this. Okay, so let's give this a go. For now, for this practice, if it's our first time doing hear in, I suggest we close our eyes. And we're going to find a posture that allows us to be balanced, where we feel that our spine is upright and that we are able to relax our body around it. Bring your attention to the area in your mind where you notice the sound of self-talk. When you focus in on that space, if you hear an example of self-talk or sound, give it the label hear and focus intently on it for a few moments. If you notice an absence of self-talk, give that the label rest and focus intently on that for a few moments. After a few moments, we let that go. Bring our attention back to that area where self-talk occurs and begin again, noting and labeling whatever we notice that's there. You can label out loud or in your own mind. If you notice your attention drawn away by a different kind of experience, perhaps something you hear in the environment or feeling you feel in the body, just allow those things to be there, but let them be in the background and bring your attention back to sound or silence in the mind. Labeling out loud can be a very helpful way to keep our attention focused on the practice. We're not trying to create or look for a certain kind of experience. We're just noticing whatever's there. Whether it's active or restful. As you focus in, you may even begin to notice more closely the moment when mental thought first appears. The moment when an example of self-talk first appears. And now let's bring this short practice to a close. And when you're ready, just open your eyes. If this is your first example of meditating with thought as part of the focus range, well done. And thank you for practicing with me today.